Amen. So again, our opportunity to be part of so many meaningful things this time of year. We've got this sheet. We've had it in the seats for the past couple of weeks, but it's available out there as well. You can find the angel tree will be up next week if you want to come and grab an angel off the tree. All of those kids, as you've heard, that get sponsored in that way have a loved one who is incarcerated. And so we are able to not only provide gifts for those kids at Christmas, but also that party, no joke, if you haven't seen it before, it really is some combination of a 10-year-old threw up in here, and if they were like, just tell us, if you're 10, tell us what you want. What would you love to have? You want no protein and all candy? Great, let's do it over there. So that is coming up soon as well. And so we're grateful for the ways we get to serve. We're grateful for our ongoing work with our holiday food baskets. When we started this morning, every week we've gathered here in the past 2 or 3 weeks and we've talked about Thanksgiving baskets and Christmas baskets. Whatever our need has been out there, you guys have walked out those doors and met it, literally. So where we're at this morning is, I think when the morning started, I think we had 8 more Thanksgiving baskets that we said yes to, and I think 6 of them. We're still taking Christmas. Families can still sign up for Christmas, but there are 6 out there right now. So if you have not gotten to be part of that yet, we still have a few out there that are available. That basket distribution will take place a week from today. There are so many incredible things that take place around here this time of year, and we're grateful for your love and support and your prayers and your presence and all of that good stuff with all of those things. Now, back when I was in high school, which is more years ago than I will admit to you, I used to run cross country and track. And I still, like in the years that have come, I don't get to run a lot, but I still have always really enjoyed just kind of the solitude and the peace of going out and running. When I was in high school, I used to say that there was no teenage drama that could befall me from 8 to 3 that I couldn't work out between 3 and 6 miles later that afternoon. I really love the peace of it. I really love just the solitude of it. And so when Alex and I lived in Athens, when I was an associate pastor at a church in Athens, we lived in a townhouse, and it was connected to this city park, and it was a really great place to get out and go run. And so I was out one morning running before I was going into the office, and I kind of ran down and went around this way, around the park, and the middle school was right there. And it was middle school drop-off time. So I'm running. It's a big open area. There's soccer fields there. There's no trees. You can see for miles. And I'm running, and I come to the intersection at the middle school drop-off. Now, at this intersection, there was a stop sign, crosswalk, school zone, right? So triple threat of safety. And in the crosswalk, as you may know, pedestrians have the right-of-way. They used to tell us that at UT when I was a student there too. Hey, pedestrians have the right of way in a crosswalk. And I always used to say, that sounds like something they say about you at a trial after you've died, right? From being, Your Honor, pedestrians had the right of way. Unfortunately, it's too late for him. But so I'm running and I'm coming to this intersection. And you know, when you're out there and you're kind of going along, if you run or walk your dog or whatever, you always like to make eye contact with the drivers, right? When you're going to cross over, because you want to know that they see you. And you want to know that they know that you see each other and all that stuff. So I'm coming to this intersection, and there are 2 cars coming out of the middle school drop-off line. And the first car looks and sees me and decides, I've got it, and they go. I'm like, okay, great. And I look at the second car, and the woman was wearing sunglasses, but I thought we made eye contact. And it's, again, stop sign, school zone, crosswalk, all advantage me. Theoretically, right? So I'm running, and the first car goes, and she stops. She comes to a full stop, as God intended, right? It's right there. And we look, and I think we make eye contact, so I'm kind of like, okay, she stopped, so I've got the right of way, so I'm going to go. So I went, and I didn't necessarily break my stride or anything, so I kept going, and I didn't get like a pinky toe in the intersection. I was in the intersection, and I was going. And right about the time that my hip got to the emblem on her car, she went. Now, clearly, like, hi, I'm here, I'm alive and all that good stuff. It's a little disingenuous to say I got hit by a car. But because I had momentum and then she went, it's like I got bounced by a car, Like she hit me and I kind of went, pushed off, in my head it looked real cool, Like she hit me and I kind of bounced off. I didn't fall, thankfully. I had all this momentum and inertia, and I kind of bounced, and I went like that. And then I turned and looked at her, and then I said some words. No, those words aren't in the Bible either. Two of them were, but one of them was not. And I promise you, I have never used that combination of those words in my life. I've used one of those words before, if we're being honest, but like not in that sequence or that combination. I have no idea why that particular sequence of words came out of my mouth in that moment. But it came out loud and it came out fast in the middle school drop-off line. Right behind her, so now she's got the look on her face of like, I can't believe that just happened. Behind her in line was a guy from our church, because of course it was, who also served, if you've been Methodist long enough, he served on our staff parish relations committee. So like, if you don't know what that is, that's the committee what decides like who gets hired and who gets fired. Behind him was a cop. And so the woman kind of pulled away, because I was like, what do I do? Like, do I just keep going? Like what? So the woman pulled out. Shane, the guy from our church, pulled out and rolled down his window and goes, "That was crazy." And I went, like, dude, I know. And then the cop pulled out and pulled her over. And I was like, do I go over there? Like, I had so much adrenaline. I was like, I'm just gonna keep running. So I finished my run at record pace. Get back to the townhouse, took a shower. You ever do this? Like, I took a shower and it took none of the sweat off of me. Like, I got my clothes on. I came to the office at like 9. I'm sweaty and all this other stuff. And I walked in, and remember, I was the associate pastor. So I walked in and told the senior pastor, I was like, I have something I need to tell you. If you hear someone say, I think the associate pastor at Keith's church yelled out the worst word you could say in the middle school drop-off line, it's true. That's exactly what happened. I never told that story at the church, and I didn't want to embarrass the driver. I never knew who it was, and Athens is a small town. I didn't want to embarrass the driver. Let me say, if you're watching this on YouTube and you live in Athens, Tennessee, and you know who it was, you text me and let me know, because I would still love to know who that was. I promise you, if you haven't practiced, and there's no good way to practice, it's a little uncertain what comes out of your mouth in a moment like that. When we literally or figuratively bump up against something, an entirely new experience, something very powerful, something a little frightening and scary and all that, if we don't have the reps for it, our response can get a little unpredictable and not always the best. And it's hard to get reps for things like that. Now, we've been walking through this series on the disciples. There are 12 disciples that follow Jesus. We've got 3 weeks to go, and we're going to look at 4 disciples in these last 3 weeks. The 4 that are left are 2 sets of brothers, and 3 of those 4 are what we call Jesus' inner circle. This morning, I want to look at 2 brothers, James and John. The next week, we'll look at Andrew, who's the first disciple called, and then we'll finish by looking at Andrew's brother, Peter. But Peter, James, and John make up Jesus' inner circle, for lack of a better word. He's got 12, but then of these 12, these 3 guys, Peter, James, and John, really end up being kind of Jesus' core group. But as we'll see, just being in the core group is no guarantee that you're going to get it exactly right, or say smart things, or do anything that is particularly valuable in any given unpredictable moment. Proximity to power, even proximity to Jesus in this case, is no guarantee of how we might act or behave if we don't have the reps and the reflexes kind of happening along the way. What happens in our story that sometimes we kind of forget and skip over because it's a part of the story that Jesus isn't physically in is, in the Gospels, he calls these 12 guys, but then there's kind of a point, maybe 40% of the way through the Gospels, where Jesus sends them out. Jesus sends them out to go and do ministry, and he's Jesus, he can do what he wants, but he's not really there following right behind them. They go and do it. Here, this is Luke. We're going to be in Luke this morning. This is Luke 9. So we're about 35% of the way through the Gospel of Luke. And this is how Jesus sends these 12 out. In verse 1, Jesus called the 12 together, and he gave them power and authority over all demons and to cure diseases. Jesus sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal. Jesus said to them, don't take anything for your journey. Don't take a staff, nor a bag, nor bread, nor money. Don't even take an extra tunic. Whatever house you enter, stay there and leave from there. And wherever they do not welcome you, as you're leaving that town, shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. So they departed, they went through the villages, they brought the good news, and they cured diseases everywhere. So to some degree, Jesus sends these 12 out. And again, not just the inner circle. He sends these 12 out, which means he sends James the Less, Simon the Zealot, Matthew the tax collector. Can you imagine Matthew the tax collector showing up in your town and being like, I'm here in the name of Jesus Christ to heal you of your diseases? And people being like, you are the disease, right? It's like, you are the problem. He sends Judas, not Judas Iscariot, and Judas, very much Judas Iscariot, out to do this work. And in some way, apparently, they do it. Jesus gives them power to go and do these things, and in some way, it works. He says this bit about shake the dust off, right? When you go somewhere and you're not welcome, just shake the dust off. That can mean lots of different things. I'm intrigued by interpretations of that from a particularly Jewish sense. If you grew up in a religion and a system that's a lot about clean and unclean, if you're leaving an unclean or unwelcome place, maybe this idea that you don't even want to have any dust from that place on you, on your being, on your person. But either way, when you're not welcome, shake don't use words that are not in the Bible. Don't cuss them out. Just shake the dust off and go on to the next place. Because clearly, something real and vital is happening here. Now, you and I, as followers of Jesus Christ, at least for me, even as a pastor, I don't necessarily think of the calling here is that Jesus has sent me out into the world to fight demons and cure the sick. But that doesn't mean that Jesus hasn't called us out to do something, and to do something powerful and real. I wouldn't necessarily look at this story and say, that's just not for us at all. That this is still in some way something about sending the followers of Jesus Christ out into the world to do something real and meaningful. And he calls them and tells them to go and keep it simple. And if you're not welcome, just shake the dust off. And in some way, it works. So then they come back. They come back together. And they've got to come back together, right, with all of these stories of these amazing things that they saw, of these places where they went, and maybe they didn't have any reps, but they got some on-the-job training, and they went and did this, and they saw incredible things, and all of these high adrenaline kind of moments. And then what follows that are some of the highest, maybe adrenaline's the wrong word, but some of the highest and most visceral experiences of Jesus that they themselves will ever have. Jesus tells them to go out. They go out. In some way, it works. And they come back, and they've got all these stories. In the Gospel of Luke, the next three things that happen are this. First, the feeding of the 5,000, where the disciples will get to see this incredible display of power. This miracle it's the only thing that doesn't take place during Holy Week that's recorded in all four of the Gospels. That picture also has a watermark on it. I didn't notice that when I downloaded it. Shout out to whoever's copyright that is that we're infringing upon. So sorry. Okay. So some things you don't notice, so they're right up there on the big screen. So it's a gorgeous photo, which is why we borrowed it from Google and that person. It's this high power moment, right? Where Jesus' power is on incredible display in front of an incredible number of people. Right after that, we get the "who do you say I am" conversation, where Peter, one of the inner circle, says, you're the one, you're the guy, you're the Messiah, you're the Son of God. And Jesus says, that's the right answer. But then he tells them that to be the Messiah is to suffer and die. He predicts his own death for the first time. Now, these guys were given power to go out and do a thing by the one they believed to be the Messiah, and then they went out and did the thing, and it worked. And then they came back with all these stories, and they saw the Messiah do this incredible thing of feeding all of these people with a very small amount of bread and fish. And then he asked the question, "Who do you say I am?" And they get the answer right. He's the one, which would have made this a very confusing response for them, right? They've seen power and majesty and might and all of that, and it's here for the first time where Jesus says, I am the Messiah, and this is what it means. Like, I spend a lot of time saying, these guys don't know what they're doing, all that other stuff. We don't know what they're doing, but I get it, man. I get why that would be confusing. I get why that would be difficult and hard, and why people would say, sure, that can't be the case. And Jesus is going to tell them, for you, if you want to follow me, this is where Jesus says, you take up your cross and deny yourself and follow me. So they have these high point moments and then this kind of first but confusing glimpse of what it really means to be the Messiah. And then about a week after that, Jesus takes the inner circle, Peter, James, and John, up a mountain, where on top of that mountain, Jesus is what we call transfigured, where for all these images that we've just seen of the Messiah and the suffering servant and the crucifixion, we, and really they, also get this reminder that this is the all caps Son of God. Peter, James, and John are there. They hear the voice of God speaking over who Christ is, and that they should listen to him and follow him and love him. And that's something that only those three see. Only Peter, James, and John see this part. So we've got all of these really, really powerful moments, and they themselves have already been part of really, really powerful things. They are, in the case of Peter, James, and John, they are closer to Jesus than anyone, and in a way, they're seeing Jesus as God more than anyone has ever seen him. They are closer to power, closer to Jesus, and frankly, closer to God than, the comparison would be Moses, right? And Elijah, which are the two figures that are there as well. This is as close, maybe, as anyone has ever gotten. And so we might think to ourselves, man, if I was that close, it would change my life. And if I was that close, if I heard the voice of God, I would just have such incredible perspective, and I would just understand things better than I ever do, and my walk with Jesus would be so much greater, better, smarter, less dumb, fewer sins, all of that. But it's not really how it works. Here's what happens a few verses later. They've seen all of this. They've done all of this. They're coming down from the mountain. All of this good stuff is happening. Here's a little later. This is Luke 9 in verse 46. If you've gone out and you've seen and done all of these things, and you've seen Jesus do all these things, and you've seen what you've seen, it's a very human thing to take all of that and instead start thinking about, well, I must be pretty great. And if I'm pretty great, the next thing we got to do is figure out, am I greater than these other 11 guys? Let's find out, shall we? An argument arose among them as to which one of them was the greatest. Jesus, such a terrifying verse. Jesus, aware of their inner thoughts. Jesus took a little child and put it by his side and said to them, "Whoever welcomes this child in my name welcomes me. Whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me, because the least among you is the greatest." In other treatments of this passage in other gospels, sometimes you have James and John's mom coming and saying, "Hey, let my boys sit on your right and your left when you come in." I love that interpretation too of like, we think we're the best, but I don't want to ask him. Mom, go ask him. And mom, of course, loves her boys and has thought they were the best since the day they were born. When Covington was born, Covington was, Alex, if you don't hear me say anything else, women are tough. Alex tried to have that baby all day long. And at the end of the day, our doctor came in and basically gave Alex the good game pat on the butt, like, good try, let's do a C-section. And Covington was the last baby born. He was born at 10:46 at night. He was the last baby born at Park West that day. He was born at 10:46. They did all the great newborn baby stuff you do. He'd been alive for like 3 hours. They came and took him into the nursery. And the nurse came back in and said, "He was the best baby in the nursery." And Alex and I looked at each other and said, "I knew it." Like, what's he done? He's been alive for 3 hours, right? But deep down, we're like, I knew it. My kid, who's, I'm sure, having all kinds of fun and causing the good kind of trouble in the bubble as I speak, I'm sure. It's a human thing to think on some level that when these things happen and take place that are great, that it must translate into our own greatness or the greatness of our kids. And then that path just leads us down. Well, if I'm spending more time thinking about how great I am, my greatness must have to come at the expense of others being less great. So let's find out just how great I am. And Jesus knows this. And that's why he puts in front of him this little child and says, look, if you want to be like me, you got to be like them. And learn and grow and be humble and ask questions and know what you don't know. These guys, they don't have any reps. They're not that good at it, all that stuff. So we might think to ourselves, well, we've got here, so maybe Jesus will say this to them and that'll be good and they'll learn their lesson. Nope. 3 verses later, when the days drew near for Jesus to be taken up, Jesus set his face to go to Jerusalem. So in some way, Jesus is always going to Jerusalem. He's always going to the cross. But here in the Gospel of Luke, he's focused. He's on the way. He set his face to go to Jerusalem. Jesus sent messengers ahead of them. And on their way, they entered a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him. But the Samaritans did not receive him because his face was set toward Jerusalem. When James and John saw it, they said, "Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" What have we learned at all? This whole conversation starts with when someone doesn't welcome you, just shake the dust off your feet and move on. And these boys have seen more than most. They've been part of more than most themselves. And yet still, their first 2 responses are, let's figure out which one of us is the greatest. And when someone comes against us, let's burn it to the ground, baby. Look at the phrasing. Lord, do you want us to command fire? Not as if this is somehow better. Not Jesus, do it, right? It's like they disrespected you, torch them. Not that. It's let us do it, right? Because you sent us out to heal the sick and cast out demons, and we did a good job at that. So now we're ready for fire. Now we're ready when someone is against us, or the Samaritans in this case is a long-standing disagreement about where the Messiah will arrive or appear. So the Samaritans don't necessarily want anything to do with the Jews, but don't want anything to do with someone on their way to Jerusalem who might be the Messiah. And their response is, let's burn it down. Proximity to power is no guarantee that we in our humanness and our fleshiness will automatically act or speak in ways that are a good reflection of that power's character. Sometimes, if we're honest, we're people. We like, or we're prone to like conversations about who is the greatest and why is it me. And then we're prone to not just want God to judge people who we view to be at fault, but, prone to say, God, I want you to judge them, and I would love it if you let me help. Now, I don't think any of us has experience with calling down fire. I hope not. But it's good for us, it's good for me to be aware of our very human desire that no matter how long we've been following Jesus, or whatever our proximity to, or whatever amazing and incredible experiences that we've been part of and all that we, even the inner circle, even James and John, even the disciple whom Jesus loved and his brother, are prone to seeking their own greatness first and prone to calling down fire or wanting to on anyone who disagrees. The truth for us in closing is that, again, maybe we don't think of it as God has given us power to cast out demons and cure the sick. But I promise you, God has given you power. God has given us the Holy Spirit. But for us, it's more about the presence that God has given us. The most powerful thing we have is good news. It's the most powerful thing we have. It's a good news that's rooted in our own understanding of grace and forgiveness. So that the more I understand my own capacity and my own need for grace, and that grace is here and I have received it, the better I am at going out into this world to share good news of that same grace. I can't promise you if I get hit by a car today that what exactly is going to come out of my mouth. I'm going to work really hard to not get hit by a car today. Some of these things we just aren't overly experienced with until we're experienced with them. But I promise, and maybe casting out demons and all that stuff seems like something that you would never experience or never want any part of, but I promise you, Jesus has given us power, and Jesus is still in the business of sending us out. What we want to be aware of is, what I want to be aware of, is our own temptation to go out and make it about us, or to look at someone else and say, well, they're doing it well, but I'm doing it really well. Or they're special, but I'm the best baby in the nursery. And our temptation to look at those who we might disagree with or might say are doing it wrong or poorly, and internally think, God, you should take care of that, and please let me help. God doesn't need our help judging anybody. It's not our job. Our job is to carry the good news of the grace of Jesus Christ out into this world, to do it in childlike ways, because we have so much left to learn. And our proximity to Jesus won't change. I don't plan on having this all figured out about 10 years from now, right? And being like, well, now I've got it. We will always have more to learn. And Jesus will always be walking with us, giving us power, giving us presence, and inviting us to go out into the world to share the same grace that we know well for ourselves.